Let's look at the VRBO Citrus Bowl January 1 game between Northwestern and Auburn. Auburn comes in 6-4, finished third in the SEC West, behind Alabama and Texas A&M. Northwestern comes in 6-2, first in the Big Ten West, runner-up in the Big Ten championship game, a 22-10 defeat to Ohio State. When you look at the schedules, and we'll kind of run through those real quick, we know with Northwestern exclusively Big Ten schedule, ran through Maryland 43-3, barely got by Iowa, beat Nebraska by 8, Purdue by 7, Wisconsin by 10, Michigan State was the one game that they lost. That was a little bit of a shocker, 29-20 on the road. Then they beat Illinois 28-10. And then got tripped up by Ohio State in that Big Ten title game, as I suggested as I mentioned just a minute ago. On the Auburn side, opened up with a win against Kentucky, road loss at Georgia, barely got by against Arkansas. They lost at South Carolina, which was a little bit of a head scratcher, and then they won at Ole Miss by 7. Beat LSU pretty good, 48-11. They looked like their best overall win of the season. And then they beat Tennessee by 2 touchdowns. They lost at Alabama. They lost against Texas A&M, and then ended the year with a 24-10 road win at Mississippi State. Northwestern comes in averaging 23 points per game, 162 on the ground, 186 in the air, a little bit balanced attack. Auburn comes in at 172 on the ground, 212 in the air, averaging 25 points, a little bit more than Northwestern. Still a balanced attack, a little bit rather inefficient, in my opinion, throughout the year with Bo Nix at quarterback. Defensively, though, that's where that's where things change a little bit. Auburn's averaging, giving up 23 points a game, 163 on the ground, 237 in the air, whereas Northwestern comes in only giving up 15 points a game, 156 on the ground, only 187 through the air. So the numbers suggest the strength in the Northwestern defense is going to come in the pass defense. How does that figure into this matchup and the key players? We're going to see. In my opinion, I think that there's opportunities for Auburn to move the ball against Northwestern, particularly against the Northwestern run defense. The inefficient Bo Nix this year may have a little bit of trouble against the Northwestern passing game. And then over on the Northwestern side, going up against Auburn, I think there's going to be some opportunities there, but Northwestern hasn't been able to do enough to really distance themselves from their competition. So they come in 3.5-point favorite. I feel like that the game is lined. I feel like that's a good line. Total of 43.5. That is a low total. But let's see what we're going to do inside of the matchups and take a look at some of the key players in this matchup. We're going to go ahead and start where I find there's more questions, and I think that's on the Auburn side, not because Gus Malzahn has been replaced as head coach or they're replacing him as head coach, but I feel like Auburn's been a little inconsistent all year long. Now, the one thing that we do have going for us, and the one favorable thing we have going for us from a fantasy standpoint for Auburn is consistency. We know that Bo Nix is going to be the quarterback. In all likelihood, we're going to get Tank Bigsby as the running back, as their lead back. 834 yards, 5 touchdowns on the season. We've got Sean Shivers, Mark Anthony Richards probably playing some type of a complementary role behind him. As far as the receivers go, there's 3 main targets for Auburn and quarterback Bo Nix: Anthony Schwartz, Seth Williams, Eli Stove. That's probably going to be it. 1, 2, 3. They're probably going to receive a vast majority of the targets. Schwartz comes in with 54 receptions, leading the team, 636 yards, 3 touchdowns. Seth Williams, 42 receptions. His 688 yards leads the team. He's got 4 receiving touchdowns. That leads the team. And then Eli Stove, 40 receptions, 330 yards, and 3 TDs. So they will, Bo Nix will distribute the ball evenly amongst those 3 guys. That's what the numbers suggest. All 3 of them with at least 40 receptions this year. On the Northwestern side, Peyton Ramsey nailed down as the quarterback. He's only got 9 touchdown passes on the season. He does have 213 rushing yards. I didn't mention this. Bo Nix, 2,100 passing yards, only 11 TDs. He's got 357 rushing yards and 7 TDs. So when you look at the quarterback side by side, Bo Nix probably a little bit more valuable from a fantasy standpoint because his tendency to run the ball a little bit more than Peyton Ramsey. On the Northwestern side, we've got Cam Porter, who's probably going to do most of the damage when it comes to the backfield with Northwestern. Remember, Isaiah Bowser and Kyrick McGowan have both announced that they're transferring out of the program. I don't think they'll be available for the bowl game. I think they've already entered into the transfer portal. So that leaves us Cam Porter as running back one, Drake Anderson as probably and Evan Hull as probably number 2 and 3. And I expect to see both of those guys get some work in the bowl game if they're both healthy headed into the matchup. Ramon Bowman, the leading receiver for Northwestern, 39 receptions, 540 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is going to be Peyton Ramsey's top target. And I think the question for Auburn will be on the defensive side of the ball. Can they take him away and make Northwestern beat them with another player, maybe a John Rain at tight end, Riley Lees, maybe the other tight end as well, Charlie Majeri? Will one of those other guys step up if Auburn's able to take Bowman away? This year, Bowman's been the top target for Peyton Ramsey. I expect that to happen again in the bowl game. And here's what I'm looking at. First of all, let's just kind of say, who am I going to emphasize from a fantasy standpoint? Let's just assume Auburn comes in motivated. Let's assume new coach, and they just say, you know what, this is a free hand. Let's just go ahead and let it rip. I think if we look at it that way, then I think Bo Nix has to be the top target in this, considering that Northwestern's defense is allowing 162 rushing yards per game on the ground. I think that presents a favorable matchup for Tank Bigsby in the running game. So where we might get a little bit more of things mixed up for the receiving core for Auburn, where it's a little bit more of a committee approach and we don't know really where to shove our chips in on a receiver. I think best case scenario, Bo Nix has a good game. Bo Nix, Tank Bigsby, probably your 2 best options in this matchup. Whereas over on the Northwestern side, I really believe it's going to come down to Peyton Ramsey being able to make enough throws, possibly converting on 3rd down, and Cam Porter in the running game, keeping the chains moving, keeping the clock running. Northwestern's great at just staying in games long enough and figuring out a way to win it in the end. So that's why I think this 43.5 point total is really going to come into play. I'm expecting this game to go under. And while I think Auburn has all the pieces needed to win this game and even cover the 3.5 point spread, I have to tell you, I have a history of never picking teams in a bowl game that are playing without their coach, that are in transition without a coach. We know that Auburn's going to get another coach. We don't know who that coach is yet as this video was recorded. But I just don't know if the glue is there, the cohesion is there, and it's going to be able to stay together for the bowl game. And for that, I'm putting my chips in the middle of the table on Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern, who seems to find a way to get it done. That extra half a point at 3.5 does worry me with giving up that, because I almost feel like Northwestern's a team that's going to stay in it long enough and beat you by a field goal. But I worry about the transition at coach for Auburn. All things considered, regular season game, I'd probably take Auburn. But because this is a bowl match and because Auburn is a team in transition, I'm going with the stability of Pat Fitzgerald and Northwestern. Not only am I taking Northwestern to win, I'm taking them to cover the 3.5 points. And I'm looking for this game to go under the total of 43.5.